Hello everyone, and welcome to the New Wave Learning vlog on diversity and inclusion. We're focusing on this topic because we're currently producing a piece of work around the 6 traits that Deloitte identified that to depict inclusive leadership. And this was based on a report that they worked on back in 2016. And I'm very happy to say that today we've been joined by Ciara Ajay from Clifford Chance. Hello, Ciara. Morning.
Hello, morning.
How are you doing?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. I'm very well, thank you. And really excited today that we are going to be covering off 2 of the traits, and that is cognizance of bias and commitment. The first one I'd like to start talking about with you, Ciara, is around commitment and how we, how we don't settle for the easy option and just go for the quick wins. And I know time pressures, work pressures, the bottom line tend to force that sort of level of commitment. So my question to you would be for commitment to be truly inhabited in the workplace. How would you say, and based this on your whole professional experience, how do we go about creating D&I strategies and initiatives that don't just force inclusion and therefore it becomes inauthentic, and then we say, yes, we're doing this, move on? How do we really get to live it, as it were?
I think there's always going to be different motives for diversity and inclusion. I think previously it may have felt like a tick box exercise, but I think in recent years what we've seen is that is no longer enough. I think clients and future employees have a choice about where they place their business or accept that job offer. So I think the values of an organisation matter. And I think it's important to kind of question yourself as an organisation. What do you stand for? What do you represent? If we cut through your organisation, for want of a better phrase, what will be at its core? And I think at its core, Clifford Chance is about justice and fairness. And if the lived experience is negatively different for some more than others, then what are we going to do about it? It is a problem for all of us. And I think it's important to kind of know how you're going to move forward to action that. And Clifford Chance have introduced global and regional inclusion targets to ensure that we're committed to delivering the equality and of the experience, an opportunity for everyone in our firm. And it's not just about making the numbers. Our targets are ambitious at a global level and a regional level because there's still a way to go. And I believe that in embedding these values, we will attract, we will grow, we will retain what we want to reflect in our organisation. And that way we will kind of move towards diversity and inclusion not being a forced value, but a shared one, because the values between those individuals and the values of the organisations are aligned. So it doesn't have to be forced because it's completely natural, I think.
Tell me the difference between, and I appreciate, and it isn't a tick box exercise, and I think, many organisations have moved on from that, as you said, but how do you differentiate from it being that and how do you, I suppose, sort of do the litmus test in terms of ensuring that it is at the forefront of everyone's minds other than just targets?
I think you kind of have to kind of change the rules. We have a mantra, kind of change the rules, change the culture, change the lived experience. And I think that so it's typically you kind of look at quotas and you might think, oh my gosh, that's just kind of like a way to say, oh, we're funneling people through and that's how they're going to do it. But it's the quality. It's nobody in those kind of different demographics of society want to get somewhere because of X. They want to get there because of the value that they offer and who they are, not necessarily how someone has prejudged them to meet that quota. I don't think anybody wants to be in that position, but I think it's about kind of, again, we have this notion at Clifford Chance that you have to be an active campaigner, and I think you have to kind of campaign for this to be the kind of experience that people want to share in, so that they can actually feel comfortable at work. And I think that it's not to say that quotas are negative, because I genuinely do think it's a way to get people to realise that there is some way to go. But I equally think that kind of creating environments where people can share their experiences, make people alert or notice that there is a difference, that we can kind of all come together and think, oh, okay, well, that's not how I've experienced things. Why is yours different? What kind of preconceptions may have contributed to that, I think is important. So I think it's a cultural change as well as kind of other changes that are happening. But I think you have to kind of recognize that everybody is different, which is great, but equally that doesn't mean that they have had the same equality of experience, equality of opportunity, and their lived experience is different. So I think there has to be kind of like and I think this has happened over the last couple of months, you kind of review your position and how that's different to others and why that's different to others. And I think that constant questioning, willing to kind of actively create environments to question, safe spaces to share your experiences and not make people feel bad or feel scared about asking questions, and just listening, because I think that's something that we do take for granted, that listening to people is important. Like, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, isn't it? So you should speak twice, you should listen twice as hard as you speak. But I think listening is something that's so important, because I think in the kind of world that we are in at the moment, there's so much noise, and you don't know if it's information, misinformation. You can kind of become oversaturated and disengaged. But I think in becoming disengaged, you don't realise that it's also quite nice to be able to become disengaged, because that doesn't directly affect you, because you can they can't do that.
I just missed you on that last bit, Ciara. You said that disengagement can also be beneficial, or just sort of stepping back could be beneficial. So could you just repeat that for me again?
No, what I was saying was that I think sometimes people can become disengaged because they are kind of oversaturated with information for 2 reasons. So I think sometimes you can become disengaged because it's all a lot to take on. But I think when you become disengaged, that also doesn't, in some situations, it might help the problem, because it might be overwhelming for somebody to kind of constantly be on the kind of, this is at the forefront of my mind. But on the flip side, being able to disengage because it doesn't directly affect you is also not going to move things forward, because you're not going to be able to be part of the group of people or create the allyship that needs to affect change.
I love what you've said about listening. In all my years of training and facilitating and doing role playing, and it's the biggest thing in terms of feedback that I have to share with who I'm working with is listening skills, because I think we're born with them and therefore we don't train them.
Yeah.
2 ears, 1 mouth, you do the math. I just want to pick up on something you said earlier, because that's a beautiful segue into our next trait that we're looking at, because you mentioned about people getting to positions in life and getting opportunities and feeling a part of and a connection of an organization through their own merit, and not through sort of being a representative or being there simply because that means that a box is ticked. And our next question is around cognizance of bias. And I think there was a time a while ago when we were all training about unconscious bias and surfacing those, and now it's being cognizance of all the biases that are there and around us that are necessary for us to, the whole fight, flight, in survival and get through our working days, but how much that pregnates the decisions that we're making in terms of inclusivity. So my question to you would be, if we're in agreement that we all have biases, how can an organization then build a D&I strategy that challenges the biases of the leaders?
I think it's very true to recognize that we do all have biases, and these are based on perceptions, opinions, our own experiences, or those of others. And our perceptions are how we've tried to make sense of the world without all the information we need or have access to. But we're human and we're flawed, And it's important that we check our own biases so that they don't affect others. And the only way to do that is to be committed to sharing, learning, and acting on that new information.
Hey.
And one way and one way we're doing that at Clifford Chance is through our reverse mentoring scheme. And the scheme takes that traditional mentoring approach and reverses it. So a senior leader is mentored by a more junior colleague who, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, is different from them in some way. And I think it seeks to create an environment and an opportunity for an open conversation where both parties genuinely do want to learn from one another and push each other really out of their comfort zone. So no question is off the table. And I think that's one thing that we've seen in recent months, which is a growing area of concern for people. They don't want to say the wrong thing. And what we've witnessed recently is that saying nothing can sometimes be more problematic than saying something.
Yeah,
so
doing that, sorry to interrupt, Ciara, just thinking that almost gives you license because you are working with, you know, let's call it a non-PLU, so someone, you know, not people like us, so working with mentoring or being mentored by someone who's not from your demographic in the workplace, let's say, either that's departmental or another segment, that it kind of gives you license to ask those questions from a place of I'm willing to learn. You know, you can be open with, because it's agreed that we are coming from two different households, perspectives.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, because I think sometimes you get too scared to say something and then you don't say it, and then you might say it in another situation because it might be a flip of the tongue or you genuinely believe that. But until somebody says to you, oh, have you thought about it from this way? Or if you thought, giving you different perspective, and then we make assumptions based on our own lives, and then those assumptions are not true realities for other people. So sometimes kind of bringing those to the fore and having an environment to bring that to the fore will really embed and create really enriching learning experiences for people. And I think it's something about finding comfort in the uncomfortable, because that's where growth always begins. It's one of my favorite sayings, like growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. And bringing two people to a table where they might not necessarily align, inverted commas, in some aspects of their life, giving people that kind of opening into it to kind of see, I think is a really great experience that doesn't happen all the time. So it's a really, really great scheme that we have at Clifford Chance, and I think it's something that would be beneficial for both parties, and kind of, again, give, like you said, open the door to have that open conversation.
Give me that favourite phrase again. I want to hear it again.
It's not mine. I definitely stole it off some picture somewhere. I do believe that growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. So I think you have to push yourself there in order to develop.
People go to work to grow, to benefit, you know, to really expand their horizons. Not work, they to make, you know, social engagements, etc., to also benefit, you know, their own experiences. But of course, in doing that, it means you have to, as you say, step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Make that experience part of your current, present, past experience.
And I equally think that sometimes we kind of might think that work is just that this one line of growth, and you kind of have it going, and anything outside of that is outside of that. But what we're seeing more and more is that things like diversity and inclusion, other social issues, they permeate your life, even though it might not be something that you consciously want to do. So I think more and more that we're seeing, I mean, we've seen it because of the pandemic, the lines becoming a bit blurred between your home and your work life, for example. But you can literally be on this one trajectory, but there's other things that come into that which will genuinely affect your growth, hopefully for an enriching reason, but also to kind of, again, that questioning, that understanding, that's trying to kind of step into somebody else's shoes and able to understand their lived experience. And whether you're doing it for your colleague or your client, it is something that is beneficial for you, because you want to understand people more, especially when you're working in that sort of people business where you can't just be someone's life can't be this kind of abstract concept that you don't really want to understand, because building relationships and kind of sharing experiences with other people is how you kind of do get on in life.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you're absolutely right. just to summarize, that, you know, growing at work and growth isn't just about the rewards and the packages, etc., and the new job title and the remuneration. It is about, you know, really growing sideways as well. I could chat all day about this. I'm really, you know, and I'm really impressed about the work that Cliff Chance are doing and putting their focus on kind of mixing things up a bit, you know, coming at it from a different angle. But I have to draw this to a close with our final question. And, you know, please feel free to speak from your own experience outside of the organisation as well, Ciara. When I ask you, you know, in your opinion, what do you think, or what do you perceive? And, you know, this can change tomorrow, but what do you perceive to be the biggest challenge? I'm going to narrow it down to just one. Biggest challenge to creating inclusive cultures where diversity can thrive and people really get a sense of belonging.
I think there's multiple barriers to creating inclusive cultures, but that doesn't mean, I'm not by any means saying that they can't be overcome. I think one of the main barriers to creating inclusive cultures is the recognition and the acceptance that it is everybody's job. Everybody has a role to play in diversity and inclusion, and that role never ceases, because once you stop, you're not making any progress, and it requires consistent effort. And I genuinely do believe that it's a privilege to be able to switch off and potentially ignore issues that are very real for individuals who are, say, Black and ethnic minority, LGBT, have a disability, or are female, to name a few examples. And I think that it's in recognising that privilege, that we don't all have the same equality of experience, and groups of people can be treated less favourably for one of those reasons, that we really do put ourselves in a position to affect action. And I think perceptions can really affect one person's journey, and that can multiply over time when you just think about the vast amounts of people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. So I guess my response is twofold. I know you said that you want to kind of focus on one, but I think it's twofold, because once that recognition is there, that there is a difference in the lived experience, there remains a commitment to making a difference to overcome that barrier. And these groups of affected people are already invested, but it's everybody's job, both inside and outside of the workplace, to positively affect change and create environments for people to be their true authentic self. And if you do truly believe that if you truly believe in diversity and the beauty that comes from difference, then that difference should never be a disadvantage. I think experience shapes us, and we should share and learn from these experiences and share from one another to move forward, because progress is the only option at this point. And as we see with generations coming through our organisations now, they are very closely aligned with the morality and ethics of the world. They want to work with or work for organisations that believe diversity and inclusion and other social issues are important, and not just because it's commercially viable or commercially beneficial for firms to do so, but just because it's the right thing to do. Sorry for my really long answer.
Topic I'm really picking up on the fact that you're very passionate about. So it's with sadness I'm going to have to say we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Ciara. Ciara J from Clifford Chance, joining us on those two C's there. So I hope those watching have been able to enjoy this session with Ciara, as well as joining us next time in the spirit of inclusivity. Everyone is welcome on New Wave Learning's next vlog.